I never thought I'd get a job. Like, there was just no future. And 50,000 of my peers left every year. I'm hugely passionate about Perth and believe Perth should and has the potential of being just an extraordinary...
Everybody is doing some kind of a sales role in some way and fashion. This one-to-one interpersonal skills are key.
Everybody is selling, but most people don't think about that because most people, I feel, if you feel sold to, it's not a very comfortable kind of place. But when people buy, they feel empowered. When you're on stage, most people in the audience want you to succeed. They don't want you to fail. You deserve to be in the room in the same way that somebody else does. When you go away, you meet different people, you learn about different things. Be curious, be optimistic, and, say yes.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you. Welcome, Paula. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. To finally be here.
Yes, and we have tried a couple of times, but thank you for your time today. You have a varied experience across different sectors. But before I get into specific questions, I would like you to, give me a broad brush story of your history,
Okay.
and background and what you've done.
Well, it goes back to, I think, not the very, very beginning, but I was going to be a social worker in university in Dublin. And when I look at kind of where my career has got to, kind of that foundation, I never really thought it was important, but actually listening to people and building relationships has kind of been all the way kind of through my career. But I graduated in Dublin into a horrific recession. It was unlike the global financial crisis, where at least Ireland at that point had really good roads and infrastructure. We were broke, and the whole country was broke, and it was just this. I never thought I'd get a job. Like, there was just no future. And I was recently reading a book talking about kind of Ireland at that time, and 50,000 of my peers left every year. Like, the population of Ireland, people used to say things like, the last person will turn the lights off, which is so different from now. Ireland is in boom time, and the population is kind of on its way to being 6 million, I think, whereas, when I was growing up, it was like 3-4 million people. Anyway, I graduated and ended up moving to London. And I kind of had this feeling I didn't want to be a social worker, but I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I ended up getting into selling advertising, which was a complete, social work here, selling advertising on the other side. And I was in London at the time of kind of the parasuits and the loads of money, and I sold advertising for financial publications. The first was a publication called Corporate Money, and from there I moved to Corporate Money. Then I Risk Publications, Euromoney, Institutional Investor. And I knew nothing about finance, but it's the skills of selling, which I got. I had a fantastic boss called Tim Weller, who taught the kind of the steps of selling, which I think have stood me in good stead the whole way through my career. But anyway, sold advertising, travelled the world, and met my first husband, who's Australian, in London. And we actually came to live here in the early 90s for 2 years, and then I went back to live in London, and we got together again and got married and have had 2 boys in London. And then in 2002 decided to come back to Perth and raise our boys in Perth. And that marriage broke down, and I remarried in 2017 to another West Australian. But when we came here in 2002, I arrived with a 5 and a 1-year-old. They're now 29 and 24. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to be, I thought I'd be a stay-at-home mum for a period of time because I'd worked all the way through. And but I found the competitive stay-at-home mums terrifying, and I went back to work. And I got Western Australia, Perth has been incredible to me. I got a call kind of saying, "We hear you're back," because I had worked at the West Australian a number of years before. And I got this job as General Manager of Special Publications, which meant I was a publisher of books and magazines. Love books, love magazines, had no idea how to make them happen. And I had to learn things like how the paper, binding, all of this kind of stuff. And I ran a publishing arm, and we published Ray Jordan's Wine Guide. We did a number of titles called Baby WA, Kidding Around Perth. And one of the books probably that I was most proud of was a book on the Midland Railway workshops, which was up for the Premier's Award. But so in Western Australia, I did that. I moved from there to a company called Aspermont. Again, a publishing, they do mining. And I set up a business-to-consumer publication online called Super Living. I've worked for a global law firm. So all of these roles were kind of very much business development, creation, ideas, and I see that kind of curation of things, whether it's a publication or an event. And when I was at Minter Ellison, John Poulsen was the managing partner, and he introduced me to the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, which was a member-based organisation. And that was a kind of first insight into them. And a job came up and I applied for it. I didn't get it. And then about 5 years later, it came up again and I got it. At that stage, I was actually working at Baptist Care. So I got the role at Committee for Perth. And I think that was the first kind of step out in terms of having kind of a profile and connecting with government. Up until that point, I was kind of the doer, kind of helping lawyers do their tenders and helping lawyers get their CVs and helping lawyers meet people. Suddenly, I was kind of more in the front end of things. And then from CEDA, I set up my own consulting, and then in was it when I got the call about Committee for Perth, because the CEO had been in the role for 17 years and she stepped down, and I got a call, I think it was about 21, whether I'd be interested in going for this. And I applied, and I was the whole time kind of like, if I get it, I get it, if it's meant to be. And I was actually, my mother passed away and I was in Ireland when I got the call to say that I'd got the job. And I suddenly, my phone rang and I was like, is it yes or is it no? And I suddenly realised that I so desperately really wanted this job. And when they said, it's yours, it was like, oh. So I was in the role for 3 years. And they were I'm hugely passionate about Perth and believe Perth should and has the potential of being just an extraordinary... It is a great place, but it has so much potential.
You're right.
And that really was my mission in the 3 years, was to try and get people to speak more ambitiously about Perth and to not say things like little old Perth, but talk about Perth being sitting under 60% of the world's population and the opportunities that provides for Perth. But Perth doesn't stop at 5 o'clock and start at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was kind of up at breakfast events and out, and I was, I'd leave the house at probably 6 most days in the morning and get home at about 8. And that's just not really sustainable. But I feel that role needs that kind of energy and dynamism. And so we did the 2050 report and we did the 2050 summit.
Okay.
And I went, I think this is my time, this is my chapter for the committee. And I resigned kind of not knowing what else And what else was an offer other than we'd become grandparents to our granddaughter Sophia. And I just didn't want to work full time. But the R word, retirement, is something that people constantly want to put you in a box, and I'm like, I just don't have an executive role anymore. And so since then, I got approached to be the inaugural chair of the Queen QE2 Biomedical Precinct, which is, I see, all about economic diversification. I'm on the board of Rugby WA. I'm also on the ECU School of Business and Law Advisory Council. And recently I got appointed as the chair, the first chair, female chair of Perth Symphony Orchestra. And those are all amazingly kind of, in a way, complementary, because they all kind of sit in with livability for Perth, but they're quite different. And you have full kind of weeks that are really busy and then quiet. Life's good.
Wow. That's a very comprehensive and great career to talk about, in a way, the transitioning from different sectors, the front ending of conversations with government and other sectors, and then being on the boards as well. Can I start with, from a sales point of view, or from an interactive conversations point of view? Everybody is doing some kind of a sales role in some way and fashion, and they're interacting with customers or employees or their staff members or managers. And this one-to-one interpersonal skills are key. But what are how do you have deeper conversations than just a cursory high level, and how do we engage people in more meaningful dialogue rather than those few things about me and all of that stuff?
Well, I think going back to what you just said there, I've heard so many times in my career people go, I could never sell. And I say, so you don't get dressed in the morning, you don't put makeup on, you don't brush your hair. Oh, of course. I said, you're selling. Everybody is selling, but most people don't think about that, because most people, I feel, if you feel sold to, it's not a very comfortable kind of place. But when people buy, they feel empowered. And so I actually think it's that shift in your head. Many years ago, when I first came to Western Australia, I actually worked for Jeans West. That was my first job, because I couldn't work. I had the visa, I could only kind of work short term. And I always remember there was this one woman, because you got commission. If you said hello to somebody, that was your customer. And so she would like skid to the front door anytime anybody arrived into the shop. And I would generally stand at the back of the store and watch where people were walking to. Because, if you're going, if somebody walks into a shop, if they're just kind of like wandering, they're just in to have a look, they're not. But if people come straight to the jeans, they want jeans. And so I'd kind of I'd go, can I help? Are you looking for jeans? And suddenly you're helping them. So it's not like they feel kind of their space is invaded. So I do that kind of perception of, if you buy, it's your choice. And but I think, going back to your question of like it's ultimately everybody's motivation is what's in it for them. And to me, it's trying to find out. I'm curious about people. We met for the first time today, and I saw on the table an Irish claddagh ring, which kind of was like, how do you have that? Where's your connection? And, I have a bit of an insight into not huge, but I find that really interesting. And so I think I notice I'm very attentive, I'm curious, and I think that's really important about, I like knowing people, how their families, where they've come from, what's their story. And that gives me, that's been kind of what drives me. And I will often have notes on my phone of people's birthdays, or, their husband's name or their partner's name, because when you meet them next time, if you've remembered something like that, that makes somebody feel valued. And it's not it also has to be authentic. It's not a fake thing. I genuinely am interested and care. The flip side of that is if I meet and have met a lot of people, and I know myself, if I see somebody speaking on a stage, I kind of feel like I know them. And I sometimes have people coming up to me going, "Hi," and I'm like, I'm just terrified. You know, I hate that feeling of if I actually know somebody and I can't remember their name, or I feel a failure in that sense. But
I'm probably not great with names, but I'm great with faces and stories, which people tell me, and then the stories live for longer. And I think when you are networking, and then initially in the upcoming days when I was networking, and when you're new, you're trying to meet everybody in the room and all of that. But I think I've realized fairly quickly that whether the room is of 100 people or 200 people or 50 people, I will only maximum interact with 3 people and have more longer conversation than just hopping from one round of people to the next one to the third one, and then that has worked in favor because you don't need to give out your business card in the end. People ask your contact details as a default because you have given them that breadth of time, and then ask questions beyond what do you do.
Yeah.
So yes, you have been to different rooms and different for people who are middle level or starting a business, middle management, and then moved out to run a business, because you have few stints of yours to in between job roles. From a networking point of view, or from a point of view of interacting people from different stages, different rooms, what's your strategy there?
I often, and I know people get very anxious about it, and so I remember when I worked for the law firm, I used to see lawyers very nervous, or, and I would say, think about if you're in your own house, if you don't get nervous when your people, because you've invited them in. And I always try and break that down so that people kind of see people as humans, and everybody's kind of feels anxious and nervous sometimes. But when you're on stage, most people in the audience want you to succeed. They don't want you to fail unless you're a stand-up comedian. But I've said to people, collect 3 business cards and then you can go home. Because some people going to a networking event is the worst thing they can possibly imagine. For me, I think of how my husband and I went to the cricket a few months ago, and he loves the cricket, and he was in his element sitting watching it, and I was just watching people talking and all. And eventually I said, look, I'm going to network. And that's just, I love talking to people.
Yeah.
I don't really love cricket. But one thing that was told to me, it was shared to me, and I think it's something I try and do, is if you're standing at an event, is always leaving a bit of room. If you watch people, sometimes they close a circle, and it's really difficult for somebody to kind of come and join you. Whereas if you kind of leave a little space, it means there's always room for somebody to come in. And there's also room for somebody to go.
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing about networking is extricating yourself. It's not, I don't find the starting, but if you get stuck with just one other person and you can't kind of leave. So you need to get somebody else in. But I think it's breaking it down into thinking about what do I want to achieve. I sometimes walk into a room and go, oh, I don't know anybody here. Who am I going to talk to? And that's, yet people would say, oh, Paula knows everybody. And then I kind of relax and look across the room and I see one person I know. And then you look, you relax, and you see somebody else you know. So I just think it's kind of taking the kind of high level down from it, and kind of going in with curious, like, who will I meet tonight? What conversations will I have? You know, and also saying to yourself, if it's awful, I'm leaving. I had one experience. I was at the Latin American Development Bank meeting in Buenos Aires. And as you can imagine, there weren't very many females at this. And everybody, I don't speak Spanish. And there were thousands of people. I worked for Euromoney magazine, and I had to go and sell advertising. And there was this massive event, and I decided, still to this day don't know what I was thinking, but I decided to wear a white trouser suit. Like, it was a stunning suit, but a white trouser suit. Like, talk about standing out. I'm tall, and I walk into this room, and I thought, well, you know, as a woman, stand out, and everybody's like, Spanish. And I walked towards this group of like about 10 men and kind of went, hi, I'm Paula. And they just looked at me like, oh gosh, we're going to have to talk to this woman. This is just awful. And I did that about 3 times, and it was just soul destroying. And I went, I'm going back to my hotel room. So I think sometimes you also have to say, if you're not getting headway, if it's really uncomfortable, just call it. And the next day come back and try again. And, you know, because if it's awful, there's nothing, you don't need to put yourself through that. I don't know if I've answered.
Because you've been in a couple of membership-based bodies, and you've worked, and same as Committee for Perth as well. You are trying to negotiate with different stakeholders or different negotiate and then lead a conversation to a point or to an end which you want to. And then you are in a room with somewhat strangers, and everybody has a different point of opinion. How do you negotiate in those spaces, not just as a leader but also as a probably one of the minority in terms of you are the only woman. That example which you gave that there were 10 men standing, you just. So how do you play in those rooms? As in, what's the strategy there?
So, if you think of Committee for Perth, the first thing is to try and understand what's the motivator for people to be members. So, again, I don't believe you ever assume. You know, if you did assume, it's they want the best for Perth, and that is kind of an assumption, which is fairly valid. But some people are members because it gives them social license. They can say to people, we're a member of an organisation like that. Other people are members because they want to network. And other people are members and they don't know why they're members. It just is. So I think the first thing is, again, going back to that curiosity, is to try and understand what is their motivator. And because when you run a member organisation, and particularly for the committee, there was kind of 2 agendas. One was advancing Perth in the sense of on social media, having conversations about Perth, op-ed pieces about Perth, doing research about Perth, you know, so there was that kind of overarching. But then members, you know, every year a membership, their membership fees come in, and that's when they stop and go, are we getting value from this? So you need to understand what are their motivators, so that when they kind of stop and go, what did we do? You know that, well, they're really interested in hosting events. They want people in their offices. They want their staff to attend events. And so I think it is the really important thing of when you walk into those type of rooms is understanding what people's motivators are, and also their unifiers. And I see the power of, I think for me, it's when you connect people, you know, it's like, have you met they do this, you do that, you'd be good. My brain works in, I have the Gallup Strength Finder, ideation is one of my top strengths. And I thought everybody thinks like that. But I can kind of see patterns or understand how person X and Y have a connection point that they might not see. So I think that's that kind of reading the room.
And how has that, because as an executive, you can't always be in the ideation headspace.
No.
Sometimes you have to
Deliver.
come into delivery and more of, or delegation. How do you see that two different hats to be worn as an executive, and what has there been a leadership philosophy which has always worked for you?
So I think it's about sharing that vision. So again, if we took most recently, the kind of leadership that I brought into the committee was really looking into the future. And we had done a piece of research which talked about Perth growing to 3.5 million people by 2050. And so that was a published piece of research. And I use that in a sense as an anchor for where we're going as an organisation. And I think you then have to kind of bring your team along. And so kind of socialising it with the team, socialising with the board, socialising it with members. And it's incremental steps of messaging. And I think that comes, communication through the communication with your team of people that you work with, the communication up to the board, because if the board don't, if the board don't approve the strategy, then that's not going to work. But I think the key is communicating so that everybody is on the same page in just different spaces of it. The board obviously are different from your executive team.
Yeah.
But when you have a team of 5 people, including me, it's a very small team, the activation is with the members. So if members amplify your message, that's when I think a member organisation starts having real
value,
power and impact. Yeah.
And how has your leadership style evolved across the different roles, from selling ads to being an executive?
I think you're always kind of learning. I think like a lot of leaders I suffer from kind of imposter syndrome, and I kind of get through that by thinking of everybody's a human at the end of the day. I think one of the good and bad things about my leadership is I'm very hardworking, and I expect everybody to work very hard, and that can be hard for people. But I will often, I will not ask somebody to do something I wouldn't do myself, and that can have problems with delegation, because if you're a leader that's very engaged, that's the kind of leader that I am. When we did the 2050 summit, what we as a team delivered, a small, tiny team, we had, sellout room, we had 30 speakers from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. We had a workshop. It was really, really hard on all of us. It was really hard on the team. And for some of the team, they kind of were like, I didn't sign up for this. At the end of it, they were like, yes, it was fantastic. But it's sometimes my drive to deliver and my energy can be challenging for people because they don't have the same levels of energy or passion to deliver that I do. And so, yeah, that can be hard.
And I think as you are in different rooms of different leaders, not everybody is equally paced, equally. And I was talking to one of the senior leaders yesterday, and I asked this question that, if you have an imposter syndrome, and then you've been in executive positions for now good enough time, imposter syndrome should have a shelf life. And what's the tipping point over? Is it 10 years, 20 years, or 15 years? Or what's the tipping point when you say, okay, I've been in this position for long, and what's the timeline on that?
I don't think there is a timeline. I think there is an ability to deal with it in a better way, and kind of the self-talk that, you deserve to be in the room in the same way that somebody else does. I actually think imposter syndrome is our humanity. It often comes from things like what number you were in your family, were you bullied at school? All of those things kind of combine to the humanity, the humanness of a person. And I think in its positive, it's an empathy that you have, that you feel things. And so therefore I don't feel it as a shelf life. I think its control over you is the thing that needs to have the shelf life of, I've been invited into this room with the Prime Minister, with the Premier. They've invited me in. I have a right to be in this room. So it's the self-talk, but I don't necessarily think that it ever goes away, because I think it is part of who we are, who you are, and how you think and talk about yourself. And if you don't, I kind of feel that there's people that don't have it often have no personality or humanity about them. They don't care. But,
In terms of the bullying and stuff, as a young man, I was a minority in many ways, in whether it's school or whether it's sports or whether education and work as well. You feel that you have that special armor of resilience, which is brought onto you, and as you are the eldest in the family, everybody has the highest expectations, whether they don't have of themselves or of their own kids. All aunts and uncles will have a 5 cent in that. Oh, he has to be the best child.
So
of
you're
all
the
kids.
firstborn
Across all the family.
Same.
And uncles and aunts had their opinions that he needs to be the best of the best and all of that, but their own kids were not the best of the best, and so much pressure, and then that leads to that special armor of resilience, which coated me, or which built that I could take more trash from people, I could take more stuff being said to you, but still keep on moving further, and that incremental word you use to keep on, piece by piece. I think let's talk about the eldest son syndrome or daughter syndrome.
Yeah, well, I am.
Eldest child syndrome.
Eldest child syndrome. I am. And I have my first granddaughter now, and when you see how absolutely loved she is, and by everybody loves her, I was saying, we were on holidays recently, and I was saying, can you imagine the shock when the next child comes along? So my sister arrived 2.5 years after me. But the interesting thing, my sister, when I was 3.5, so she was 1, they realized she had a dislocated hip, which now with babies, they do the clicky hips.
Yeah.
Then they didn't, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, they didn't do that. And so she, from 3.5 till I was about 7, she had different plasters on her leg, she had operations. Poor darling, she was in hospital. But the flip side was I was invisible. So that I went from being like the light and joy of everybody to, you know, I couldn't be sick. I couldn't be, because it was all about her. And she's now fantastic, and her hip and everything is, but it was, I think, I didn't know it's the world you inherit. But that, I think, was quite a challenging time to grow up. But also, I grew up in Ireland in just when the church was really powerful. I went to an all-girls school. When I graduated from school, I literally thought I would never get a job. And I think that background has kind of accelerated or given the fire to this kind of work ethic, which is like, imagine you're never going to get a job, and then you get a job. So you're like, oh, I got a job. And that's, you know, that fire of I have to do the best job I possibly can has driven me sometimes to the point of, you know, just stop. But I think it's that kind of, you know, you might never get it. You know, you didn't ever think you were going to get a job. You got a job, but you have to keep proving yourself and proving yourself. Whether it's firstborn or graduating into a recession or a combination of the two, I think.
In one of your roles as the board of Perth Symphony Orchestra, isn't your interest towards arts and cultures, where has that come from? How is that leaning? And what's your broader vision?
I think probably being Irish, you know, books, reading, movies. Like if you look now for the size of the country, the number of very famous actors, authors, I think so. That I think is the kind of foundation. But I remember when I moved to live in London, you know, you could go to concerts and get like last minute tickets for really cheap. And yeah, I've just always loved, because I think that kind of gives you access to the soul of the place. I've loved the cinema, and I would go to the cinema on my own, and I'm not a packed cinema. I like having lots of empty space around me, but and I would probably go to the movies once a week, once every 2 weeks. We were at the launch of CineFest Oz last night, which looks so exciting. So I think, and then when I was at the committee, I really appreciated the fact that arts and culture, particularly, like I said, it's like the soul of a place. And people don't come to Perth because of the skyline, but people want to stay in Perth because of the things to do. And arts and culture and sport, so I'm on the board of Rugby WA as well, are kind of reasons that people go out and reasons that people hang out with their friends and conversation pieces. With Perth Symphony, I've known the organisation from the very beginning, Borby Webster, who founded it. Her vision was bringing music to everyone. So traditionally, symphony orchestras are in concert, you know, like the concert halls, and her vision was to bring the music out. And I've been at concerts down at Rockingham and Kwinana, where you see families turn up, and one of the kind of, you know, when you see this kid starting conducting to the William Overture, you know, and nobody told them what to do, they just watched it. I just think that's a really, really exciting thing to be involved in. We've got 3 concerts coming up, and the first one is with Professor Fiona Stanley, which is a series called WA Stories. And these are like, they're turning into a program where we celebrate living legends. So they've got a very unique, you know, the WA flavour. So it's Fiona Stanley, Ben Elton, who's English, but he's lived in Perth on and off for 38 years. And then Dennis Lilly, the famous, globally renowned cricketer. And people kind of go, what? How's... We use music and the orchestra play music that reflect the eras, but also their passion for music. So, you know, Fiona Stanley has had amazing connection and engagement with Aboriginal people. I'm sure there will be some Aboriginal music or context. Richard Wally's concert was last year, and that was the most extraordinary concert. He played the didgeridoo in the museum under the whale, and his story was being narrated by his daughter. And I just, seeing him celebrated, the opportunity to see somebody like Fiona Stanley being celebrated and honoured when they're alive, that they can appreciate it, I think is really exciting. But also the Bowie concert that Perth Symphony did as part of Perth Festival in the Power Station for the festival this year was extraordinary, and they used technology to have kind of images of Bowie on the walls of the power station, and so they really bring high quality, beautiful music from very classical to modern, but to a broader community. That's the aim.
And again, that's this idea that is to expand the vision and then to be more open for more audience and then expand the audience, and then and that classic example of young people learning conducting by just watching. As you expand the repertoire of knowledge, have you learned your leadership style by watching somebody? Who have you observed? Who do you think are good in leadership positions or good communicators, whether they are in politics or in mainstream life?
I think you're looking at people all the time. You know, talking about Perth Symphony, for example, they have this amazing program called Women on the Podium. Something that I only recently, I realized a number of years ago, is there are very few female conductors in the world. And at one point it was 3%. And I heard somebody say there are more female astronauts than there are female conductors. It's now about 10% of the population. And there's the ambassador for our program is this incredible female conductor called Jess Gethin. And she talks about being a conductor. It's that kind of real focus. And I remember her I talk with my hands, as you can see, quite a lot. And she was teaching somebody to be a conductor. And she was like saying, when you do this, the orchestra don't know what you're trying to tell them. And she talked about
how fine the hand has to move.
And how focused. And I remember somebody talking about Bill Clinton. He spoke very slowly. And everything was done. So I don't know. I think I've looked at, for example, when you're on boards, I've looked at some chairs. And in kind of the roles of chair now, I kind of reflect on the ones that I really enjoyed working with. And the chairs that I have enjoyed working with often are the ones that listen way more than they talk. And they kind of orchestrate everybody around the board to feel safe and to be able to share views. And then they kind of distill everything and feed it back. And that's that listening. But, you know, I thought Obama was an amazing leader. I'm really fascinated watching the New York mayor.
Namdani.
Just how he's a great communicator. And he's kind of set himself goals and he's starting to deliver them. It's an enormous task that he's set, and he has a real focus on arts. He's committed, I think it's 23 million or 32 million to funding the arts. And he's starting taxing the very wealthy. And So, the Mary, what's her name, the Irish president, her name's gone, sorry. There've been some amazing leaders. I just think it's about the time and place and who the people are around you. And along my career, I've had people that I've learned from kind of the way that they've... And I think the biggest thing is embracing opportunities and saying yes to things.
One thing which I've also observed when somebody's taking board roles, not everybody is in the board position or the board roles for the right reasons. They have their own individual reasons. And then, understanding risk appetite of different board members, running as the chair and organizing that, people should feel safe, as well as, we need to move further up, we need to lead, and we need to keep on moving. And not every decision to be made is no. You can't say no to every decision we need to make, because there is, fiduciary responsibilities you have and all those things. So how do you tackle those situations? How do you manage difficult or challenging conversations on board?
I think you absolutely have to have difficult and challenging conversations. That, by the very nature of being on a board, is something that you should be having regularly. And I think if you're on a board and everything is going swimmingly, then you're all the same. There's no diversity of thought on the board. And you need to kind of really question that. Either you've got a chair that isn't pulling you up. So I think, firstly, having just joined Perth Symphony, one of the most important things is getting to know the executive team, particularly the CEO and the creative director, but also having one-on-one meetings with all the members of the board. I know some of them through different roles, but understanding their motivation, why they're involved, will help kind of guide what their thinking might be for certain aspects. AICD recently had a really interesting article about working for not-for-profit and particularly artistic boards. If you come from a corporate world where it's so much about risk and return on investment, if you're running an arts board, the return on investment is actually impact. It's a different way. So, depending on the people that you have on your board, you could have some very, return on investment corporate type people with people that have worked in the arts all the time. And you as the chair have to kind of make sure that everybody feels they have a voice. But ultimately, you need to close a conversation. You can't keep things, you have to kind of pragmatically say, okay, we've listened to this. As chair, what I'm hearing is, do we agree? Are we going to agree? Or do we need to have further discussion on it? So I think it's really important that people feel that they can have their voice heard. But they also, you have to have closure. You have to kind of close it.
In conclusion, if you can share the worst piece of advice you have received and the best piece of advice you have received.
The worst, one of the things I remember.
The top notch, top two.
The worst piece was, I remember when I announced that I was going to leave Ireland as I graduated. And a peer who was at uni with me said, if you leave now, you'll never be able to come back. Which I've never gone back other than holidays. But I thought that was such a closed, because I think when you go away, you meet different people, you learn about different things. And if you come back, as a lot of people in Western Australia, Perth, they go away and then they come back and they bring all of that experience with them and all of those contacts and all of those networks. And I think that such a closed, narrow, awful kind of way of thinking about things. And then I think the best bit of advice was, say yes. You called me up and said, will you come on my podcast? I said yes. you know, we hadn't met before. I just think you never know where, and I think it comes back to that curiosity. Be curious, be optimistic, and, you know, say yes, because you never know where the opportunities are going to take you. When I arrived in London, I'd been in university, but I lived 5 minutes from home. University wasn't really a kind of university life, but when I went to London, that was my university experience, and I didn't earn very much money, but I was like, I'm going to say yes. So I'd get invited to things, I do, and I just think that has kind of carried me along. I haven't had a plan. This is my career is going to go like this.
Yeah.
My career has kind of evolved and ebbed and flowed and gone in one direction. And I think I see the career that I've had has been like a toolkit of experience that has brought me to this point.
Thank you, Paula. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.